Well, first of all, good morning. Thanks for having me. And my regards to the gentleman that you introduced. This is precisely the issue. I'm not very conversant with the CI 127 provisions, but I believe that election materials, these ballot papers, of course, including the devices that we use, are materials that need to be safely stored for a period of time in case there are legal issues before the courts. And for instance, the courts direct that some ballot papers or ballot boxes in ballot papers in ballot boxes must be recounted. So therefore, the easiest calculation of the safety and security of these materials is not only before the elections. When these materials, we all were told, were stored at police armories from where they were then distributed. Now, this is one clear case where the EC, rather than take responsibility for negligence and dereliction of duty, says, I'm not responsible for security. But why do you store election materials, whether in a lab or science lab, whatever it is, where people go in and out, when that particular locality is in dispute? I mean, what calculations inform the EC to negligently allow these boxes to be stored at a place where people can commit arson? So it is, I mean, after so many election cycles, one would have thought that the EC, or by this time, we as a people, would have designated or come to a common agreement that after elections, materials must be stored at police stations, which was where they were before we went for the elections. So it's seriously a dereliction of duty or responsibility that we're having here. And I don't think that we're at the end of all of these disputes around disputed constituencies and so on. Now, we all know that even though or although the NDC has won a super majority, they still want to, safeguard that majority and add on if they can. On the other hand, you have the MPP, which obviously want to claw back, some of the losses in order to enhance their image, before the public and so on, and of course, strengthen their position in parliament. So these calculations must inform how these stakeholders, i.e. the police and the military, the police and the EC, approach the security and safety of these materials. In this instance, your reporter has not told us whether when the materials were stored at that place, there was police presence. Because even if the EC neglects to keep these boxes at a safe place, it is a responsibility of the Election Security Task Force to secure these boxes. And until those contentious issues are resolved, the task force remains in place. So therefore, the security lapse is also a responsibility for the police to accept. And we must learn the right lesson. Because all these tensions are not helping the state. We need time to do the transition and then now address all the, serious challenges that we are facing as a people.
I get this sense from your submission that there are lapses in the EC security detail. And so I'm wondering, how do we ensure that incidents such as this do not occur in the future? Brief us. You are enlightened with security. What are the necessary security protocols that should be in place to protect the ballot boxes after elections?
Now, during this 2024 elections, I think all of us would come to some consensus that the arrangements the IGP put in place in his capacity as the head of the Election Security Task Force worked, largely worked. Now, what I think did not happen was that after the ballot at the stations were counted and the process moved to the collation centers, the Security Management Task Force should have regrouped, which is a technical term, for instance, we use in the army. You regroup and you redeploy. So in this Ablekuma constituency, how many ballot stations were there? Let's assume there were 30 of them. And let's assume each one had 3 security personnel, probably including 1 police, at all of them. So therefore, there were 90 security officers. Now, if at the end of it, there's only one locality where the collation is taking place, then you have 90 to redeploy or reassign. I've made this argument before. Why were security personnel not redeployed to the collation centers where this violence has occurred, especially the Ablekuma one? It's something that I don't understand. Because we finished the elections, we are not talking about 40,000 plus ballot stations. We are talking of 9 collation centers. In this case, we are talking of 1 collation center in the Ablekuma constituency. So it is just that maybe the managers at the operational level of the arrangements that the IGP put in place, or maybe the managers at the tactical level within the Ablekuma constituency, maybe it's a divisional commander or a district commander or a station commander who relapsed or who lapsed, and didn't do the work as expected. So there is nothing that is special that we need to do going forward. It is just that everybody, the EC, must act professionally with common sense and not allow ballot materials to be stored in the open, as your reporter said, or to be stored at a science lab, And then after that, or during that period and after that, the police also operationally must apply themselves in order to move abreast of the evolving situation.
Now, looking at what is playing out, the police says they're investigating the cause of the inferno. Many are already whispering the likely cause could be a party foot soldier at work, but all these are allegations. Should either of the parties involved decide to go to court, what then would be the case? Because right now the ballot boxes are nowhere to be found, all engulfed in flames.
Well, I think this question must be answered by lawyers and those who are conversant with electoral laws and procedures and so on. But as a lay person, assuming Ablekuma is a case that goes before the court, which I believe has already happened. Now, the court is going to authorize a recounting or recount of the ballot papers. The court, therefore, would invite the EC to make available the ballot boxes. It's not going to invite the police. It will invite the EC. Now, how is the EC going to explain to the court that the ballot papers have been burnt? It's an act of irresponsibility. So, I don't know, maybe ultimately, both sides are not going to cave in. The NDC says that we have been declared the winners. The MPP says no. The circumstances, of course, with the EC on its side, that the circumstances under which the declaration was made was inappropriate. So the only option, or one of the options that will be available, was for another election to be ordered by the court. Because under these circumstances, unless we can forensically examine whichever pink sheets are produced by one or the other side, there is no way of resolving this Ablekuma North situation. It's a mess. You see what I mean? It's a mess. Parliament will be reconvening or reconstituting on the 7th or the 8th. And there is going to be one seat that is vacant because the elections within that constituency have not been logically concluded. It creates unnecessary tensions and like this distraction. I believe the science lab was also destroyed.
Yeah.
Unless the materials were moved out and then set up on fire. But we need money to establish better educational facilities. Then the few that we have are being, torched as a result of contentions around. You see, but having said that, when you have high stakes elections, not necessarily do or die, you make sure that every arrangement that you put in place are very rigid, rigorous. This Ablekuma situation is one situation where whatever arrangements the EC put in place, apparently, because at the time that this was happening, I believe there was no police, or if they were there, they were not there in sufficient numbers. And when the fire, service responded, again, their hydrants didn't, or their vehicles or engines didn't have sufficient water. They didn't even have a map to show where they could source water from until a local came and said, oh, there's a borehole here or a borehole there. These are matters that should not happen if people work or act professionally. But I believe and I hope that this Ablekuma one will be resolved, appropriately within the constitutional provisions or the legal provisions, as well as using best practice and so on. But I don't expect this idea of Jamaninka, in other words, you are appealing to the MPP to concede, or you are appealing to the NDC that, oh, you already have enough. Why don't you give this one? No. Democracies don't work like that. Democracies work on the basis of principles. And I believe that we must always look for the principles and stand on the principles to adjudicate such issues.
Thank you, Colonel Retired Festus Aboagye. Let me bring